It wasn't at a funeral or a hospital or some dramatic moment that makes for a good story. It happened at a dinner table with good food and good wine and people laughing, and nobody noticed that something inside me quietly broke for the last time. My name is Lily. I'm 27 years old and I work in financial planning at a mid sized firm downtown. I have a studio apartment with a balcony where I grow tomatoes in the summer. I have a savings account that I've been building since I was 19. I have a life that is entirely mine, and it took me longer than it should have to understand that I deserved one. But before I get to where I am now, I need to tell you about the night my brother got into law school, and I got handed a spreadsheet. I need you to understand that it wasn't one bad night. That dinner was just the place where 24 years of pressure finally found its crack. Like when you press on a bruise long enough and the pain stops feeling like pain and starts feeling like just the way things are. My brother is 3 years older than me. His name is Marcus. Growing up, Marcus was the kind of kid who filled a room, loud in a way that my parents seemed to find charming rather than exhausting. He played soccer, he made friends easily, he broke things and forgot about them, and my parents orbited around him like he was the sun, and the rest of us were just trying to stay warm. I was different. I was quiet. I finished my homework before dinner. I didn't ask for much because I learned early that asking didn't get you what you needed. It just reminded everyone you were there. I remember one specific afternoon when I was 11 and Marcus was 14. He promised to be home by 5 to help my mom set up for a dinner party she was hosting. He didn't show. He was at a friend's house and lost track of time. My mom called him twice. The second time he said he'd be home soon. He showed up at 7:15 just as the guests were arriving. My mom hugged him at the door, told him she was just glad he was safe. I had been there since 4. I'd set the table, put out the serving dishes, helped her carry things from the kitchen. She didn't say anything about that. Why would she? It was just what I did. That was the pattern. Marcus showed up late and got hugged. I showed up early and got nothing. Not out of cruelty exactly. More like I had become invisible through reliability. When something always works, you stop noticing it. In high school, it got clearer. Marcus barely passed sophomore English. My parents hired him a tutor, drove him to sessions twice a week, checked his homework every night. The tutor eventually told my parents Marcus just wasn't a strong reader and they should be patient with him. They were patient. They were endlessly patient. That same year, I won a regional essay competition. The prize was a certificate and a small scholarship toward college. I put the certificate on the kitchen counter when I got home. My dad saw it, picked it up, read it, set it back down. That's great, Lily, he said. Then he asked Marcus if he'd eaten dinner yet. I'm not telling you this so you'll feel sorry for me. I'm telling you this because you need to understand the training. By the time I was in my 20s, I had been thoroughly trained to take up as little space as possible, to be useful, to be reliable, to be the one who figured things out on her own. Not because anyone sat me down and said you matter less, but because the evidence accumulated quietly over years and years until I accepted it the way you accept weather. I went to college on a partial scholarship and paid the rest through loans and 2 part-time jobs. I worked the morning shift at a campus cafe and Saturday nights at a restaurant near campus. I was tired all the time. But I graduated in 4 years with a 3.8 and a job offer before I walked across the stage. Marcus took 6 years. He switched majors twice. My parents paid his tuition, his rent, his phone bill. They sent him money for groceries. When he called to say he'd failed a class, my mum cried because she was worried about him, and they talked for an hour about what he needed, what kind of support would help. When I called to say I'd gotten the job offer, my dad said, "Good for you," and asked if I had enough saved for the move. I did. I always did, because I planned for things instead of counting on them. After graduation, I moved back home for 8 months to save money before getting my own place. I contributed. I cooked 2 or 3 nights a week. I cleaned. I took the dog to the vet when my parents were both working. I paid for my own groceries, my own gas, my own toiletries. I thought I was being a good daughter. I thought that was what being an adult in a family looked like. Marcus moved back home around the same time. He was studying for the LSAT and applying to law schools. My parents treated that period like a sacred mission. My mom would shush us during his study hours. My dad would quiz him on logic games in the evenings. The refrigerator had a whiteboard calendar tracking his application deadlines. One Tuesday morning in late October was working from home at the dining table. Marcus came downstairs at 10, poured himself coffee, sat across from me, and started watching videos on his laptop with the volume up. I asked if he could use headphones. He looked at me like I'd said something unreasonable. I'm taking a break, he said. I'm in a meeting in 20 minutes, I said. He put one earbud in. 1. My mum came through on her way to the garage and touched his shoulder as she passed. How are you feeling today, honey? You look tired? He said he'd had a rough night going over practice tests. She said she'd make his favorite dinner tonight to help him recharge. She did not ask about my meeting. I told myself it was fine. He was in a stressful period. We all needed to be supportive. I told myself this the way I had always told myself these things, as a way to smooth over the edges so I could keep functioning without feeling the full weight of what I was absorbing. November was the month things shifted. Marcus had applied early decision to one school, a well-regarded law program about 4 hours away. The house had been tense all month waiting for a decision. My dad had started checking the applicant portal daily. My mom had started going to bed early. She said she couldn't sleep anyway, so she might as well try. I had a work presentation that week that I'd been preparing for 2 months. It was for a new client, a significant account, and if it went well, it would be the biggest thing I'd handled in my career so far. I had practiced it 17 times. I had printed backups. I had tested the projector clicker in advance. I told my parents about it at dinner the Sunday before. My dad said good luck. My mum said don't forget we have Marcus's dentist appointment Thursday and I need the car. I was not borrowing the car. The presentation went well. Really well. The client signed. My supervisor emailed me that afternoon with a note that said outstanding work and mentioned she'd be recommending me for a formal commendation. I drove home that evening feeling lighter than I had in months. I walked in the front door and the whole house was already different. My mom was in the kitchen on the phone, her voice high and excited. My dad was grinning, pacing. Marcus was sitting on the couch looking dazed in a good way, like he'd just stepped off a carnival ride. He'd gotten in. I set my bag down. That's amazing, I said, and I meant it. I was genuinely happy for him. Whatever else was true between us, I loved my brother and he had worked hard for this. We're celebrating, my dad said. I made a reservation at Harlow's. That was the nicest restaurant in our area. The kind with a pre-see menu and list and a hostess who calls you by name. Go change, we leave in an hour. I change, we leave in an hour. I changed. I went. Harlow's was beautiful that night. Candlelit, warm, the kind of place where everyone speaks a little more quietly than usual out of respect for the atmosphere. My mum had called ahead, and there was a congratulations card at Marcus's place setting. The waiter knew it was a celebration and brought a complimentary appetizer. My dad ordered a bottle of wine. He stood up to make a toast before the entrees arrived. He talked about Marcus's hard work, about how proud they were, about what a long road it had been, and how this moment proved that persistence pays off. His voice got thick near the end. My mom was dabbing her eyes. Marcus was smiling at the table. It was a beautiful speech. Then my dad sat down. He reached into his jacket pocket. I thought he was getting his phone. He pulled out a folded piece of paper instead, and he slid it across the white tablecloth in my direction. I picked it up. It was printed. Clean formatting like he'd made it in a Word document. At the top it said, Household Contribution Agreement, and below that it listed my name, a start date of the first of the following month, and a monthly amount, $1,100. I read it twice. I looked up at him. You've got a good job now, he said. His voice was the same tone he'd used for the toast. Calm. Matter of fact, your salary has gone up. It's time you start contributing to the house. Utilities, mortgage share, general expenses. 1,100 a month. First of the month you can Venmo me or write a check. I looked at my mom. She was looking at her bread plate. When does this start? I asked. December 1st, he said. Give you a few weeks to adjust your budget. At the other end of the table, Marcus was talking to my mum about the law school's housing options, whether he'd live in campus housing the first year or look for an apartment. My parents would need to help with that, obviously. Law school was expensive and he'd need support getting settled. He gets a celebration dinner, I thought, and I get a bill. I folded the paper. I put it in my purse. I picked up my fork. I ate my dinner. I smiled when appropriate. I said goodbye to the waiter by name because that's the kind of person I am. In the car on the way home, I sat in the back seat and watched the street lights pass and said absolutely nothing. That night, I lay in my bed and did the math. 1,100 a month was $13,200 a year. I had been paying my own loans, my own car insurance, my own phone bill, my own everything for years. And now, on top of all of that, I would be paying to live in a house where one person's achievements were toasted with a bottle of wine and mine were acknowledged with a single sentence before the subject changed. I wasn't going to pay it. That wasn't the realization I expected. I had expected to feel angry or sad or to lie there cycling through the usual arguments I had with myself about being too sensitive or expecting too much. But what I actually felt, lying there in the dark, was something much simpler. I was done. Not done with my family. Not done in some dramatic, permanent way. I was just done pretending that the arrangement I was living in was normal, or fair, or something I had to accept because it was family. I had money saved. I had been saving since my first real paycheck because I always knew, somewhere in the back of my mind, that I would need to be able to leave on my own terms. I opened my banking app and looked at the number. It was enough for a deposit, first and last month, and 6 months of cushion. It was enough to go. I didn't decide right then to leave. The decision arrived over the next 3 days, quietly and without drama, the way the biggest decisions actually happen. Not in a single moment. In the accumulation of small realizations, I realized I could not look at that household contribution agreement and sign it, not because of the money, I had the money, but because of what it meant. It meant that in this house, Marcus's potential was an investment and mine was a resource. He was someone they were building up. I was something they were drawing from. On the third night, I packed. I was methodical about it. I had 2 large suitcases and a duffel bag. I took my clothes, my work equipment, my external hard drive, my grandmother's ring that had been left to me, the small framed photo of me and my college roommate at graduation. I left the family photos. I left the childhood things on my bookshelf. I left the extra furniture they'd given me when I moved back in. I wanted to travel light. I wanted to be able to carry everything that was actually mine. I sat down at my desk at 1 in the morning and wrote a note on a piece of plain paper. I wrote, Mom and Dad, I've decided to move out. I have what I need. Please don't contact my workplace or my friends. I'll reach out when I'm ready. Give me space and I'll come back eventually. Don't give me space and I'll disappear for good. I love you. Lily. I took the printed household contribution agreement out of my purse. I set it on the center of my desk. I placed my note on top of it. I carried my bags downstairs one at a time. I knew which steps creaked. I had lived in this house long enough to move through it in the dark without making a sound. I loaded my car. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment. The house was dark. The maple tree in the front yard moved a little in the November wind. I thought about going back inside, making coffee, pretending the last 3 days hadn't happened. I put the car in reverse. My first night was at a Marriott courtyard about 15 miles away. It was clean and anonymous, and I was the only one with a key to the room, and that felt like the most important thing in the world. I sat on the edge of the bed with my shoes still on and stared at the wall for a long time. My phone started going around midnight. Mom, then Dad, then Marcus. I watched the screen light up over and over. I did not move to answer it. My hands stayed flat on my knees. Every instinct I had been trained into was screaming at me to pick up, to explain, to smooth it over, to fix the crisis I had apparently created by leaving. I sat on my hands. Not metaphorically, literally. I slid both hands under my thighs and sat on them to keep myself from reaching for the phone. The texts came in waves. My mom asking where I was, asking if I was safe, asking if this was a joke. My dad's texts were curt and angry. This is immature. You have responsibilities here. Call me back right now. Marcus sent one text that said, "Hey, is everything okay? Mom is freaking out," and then nothing else. I noticed what none of them were saying. Not one of them are saying. Not one of them asked if I was okay. Not one of them said, "We understand you're upset. We want to hear you out." They were worried about logistics. They were worried about what the neighbors would think. They were worried about the inconvenience of my absence. I turned the phone face down and did not sleep. In the morning, I called my coworker's husband, who was a real estate agent, and asked if he knew anyone with a place available immediately. He texted back within an hour. A tenant had broken a lease early. One bedroom, second floor in a building 12 minutes from my office. The landlord wanted it filled quickly. The rent was $1,450 a month, utilities included except electric. I went that afternoon. It was a real apartment. It had actual closets and a dishwasher and windows on two sides. The bedroom got morning light. The kitchen had a gas stove. I stood in the empty living room and thought, this is something I can build a life in. I signed the lease on the spot. I sent a single group text to my parents and Marcus that evening. I said, I'm safe. I've moved out. I've found a place. Please respect my request for space. I will reach out when I'm ready. I blocked their numbers for 2 weeks, not because I hated them, but because I didn't trust myself to hold the line if they kept calling. I needed the silence to learn how to hear my own thoughts. The first week was the strangest of my life. I slept on an air mattress. I ate cereal and takeout. I went to work every day in my best blazer with concealer under my eyes and answered every email promptly and said nothing to anyone about what was happening. My supervisor asked on Wednesday how my weekend had been. Eventful, I said. She laughed and moved on. What I didn't know during those first few quiet weeks was what was unraveling back at the house. I found out gradually. My cousin called me about 3 weeks in, the one I'd always been close to, asking if I was okay, and also letting slip that apparently the household had entered a state of low-grade chaos. My dad had missed a credit card payment because I usually logged in and paid it from the shared account when he forgot. My mom had double booked herself for two different commitments on the same Saturday because I was the one who managed the shared family calendar. Marcus had called a repair service about a leak under the kitchen sink and given them completely wrong information because he'd never dealt with anything like that before. And the plumber had come out and charged a diagnostic fee for nothing. I listened to all of this. I did not offer to fix any of it. I said, I'm sure they'll figure it out, and changed the subject. It was the hardest thing I'd done in years, that sentence, because my instinct was still to help. My whole body still moved toward the problem with a solution ready. But I had spent 24 years being the solution, and the result was that no one had ever had to develop their own. Marcus was the first to reach out directly. He found my work number, which I hadn't blocked, and called on a Thursday afternoon. It's me, he said when I answered. I knew. Nobody else led with "it's me" like they were the only person in the world who would call. What do you need, Marcus? Pause. To talk. We agreed to meet the following Saturday at a coffee shop near my new apartment. Neutral territory, my choice, my neighborhood. He looked tired when he walked in. He'd always had this quality of effortless presentation, good posture, easy confidence, and it was slightly deflated. He sat across from me and wrapped both hands around his coffee cup like he needed something to hold. How are you? He asked. Better, I said. You? Honestly? He exhaled. Dad's been rough. He's stressed about money, which apparently I didn't fully understand was a thing. He's charging you rent now. Marcus looked up. How do you know? Because that's what happened when the free labor left. He was quiet for a moment. 600 a month, he said. Plus I have to handle my own subscriptions, my own gas. I've been cooking, which it turns out requires both ingredients and advanced planning. A short, wry laugh. I burned eggs last week. Like, how do you burn eggs? I almost smiled. You leave the heat on too high and walk away, apparently. He looked out the window. I'm sorry, Lily. I waited. I didn't see it, he said. I knew you did stuff around the house. I just didn't think about how much. I didn't think about any of it. I just assumed things would get handled. That's messed up. It wasn't a complete accounting. It didn't cover the years of dinners where my news was a speed bump. It didn't cover the tire I changed in the rain at 17 while he was at a soccer game. It didn't cover every essay I'd edited, every form I'd filled out, every time I'd absorbed the ambient stress of the household so he could float above it. But it was real and it was his, and I believed him. Thank you, I said. Are you going to come back? No. He nodded slowly. Are you going to talk to Mum and Dad? When I'm ready. My dad came to my apartment 7 weeks after I left. I don't know how he found the address. My best guess is my cousin, who wasn't great at keeping secrets when my dad put pressure on her. He showed up on a Wednesday evening in early January, just after dark, and knocked on my door with that specific knock he had, 4 sharp raps, the kind that said the person on the other side wasn't asking. I looked through the peephole. He looked older than he had at Harlow's, colder in both temperature and expression. He was wearing his grey winter coat, which I had picked up from the dry cleaner for him in October. I opened the door, but I stood in the frame. Dad, you're going to let me in, he said. It was not a question. I'll talk to you from here. His jaw tightened. This is ridiculous. Your mother is a mess. It's been 7 weeks. Whatever point you were trying to make, you've made it. I wasn't making a point, I said. I moved out. That's it? You left without a word. I left a note. A note. He said it like I'd handed him a parking ticket. You're 27 years old and you leave your family a note. I'm 27 years old and my family handed me a billing agreement at my brother's celebration dinner, I said. So I made a decision that made sense to me. He crossed his arms. Your brother is going to law school? That costs money. We are all adjusting. You're adjusting by charging me $1,100 a month while sending him to a restaurant and paying his application fees. That is not. He stopped, recalibrated. He's in a different stage of his life. He's 3 years older than me. He needs more support right now. He has always needed more support right now, I said. And I have always been the one who didn't need it because I made sure I didn't. That's not the same thing as not deserving it. My dad didn't answer. There it was. The thing neither of us had ever said out loud. I had made myself low maintenance as a survival strategy, not because I had no needs. And they had mistaken the absence of complaint for the absence of need and built a whole family structure on top of that mistake. I'm not coming back, I said. I'm not angry at you, but I'm not going back to that. He looked around my apartment from the doorway. At the air mattress I'd replaced with a real bed by then. At the small table with 2 chairs. At the plants on the windowsill I'd bought because I needed something alive in the space. You're comfortable, he said. It wasn't a question either. I'm mine, I said. He left without another word. No ultimatum, no apology. He just turned and walked back down the hall, and I closed the door and stood with my back against it and listened to the sound of my own breathing until my heart rate came down. The months after that were the best of my professional life. I had energy I hadn't realized I was missing. Every weekend I'd been going home to manage, to clean, to mediate, to exist as a function rather than a person. Now my weekends were mine. I took a ceramics class on Sunday mornings. I started running. I cooked real meals for myself and ate them at my own table at whatever time I felt like eating. At work, I volunteered for a long-term restructuring project that my team had been nervous about taking on. It required a lot of independent judgment and detailed analysis. And normally I would have hesitated because I was always too tired by midweek to trust my own thinking. Now I wasn't tired in the same way. I did the best work of my career. My supervisor put my name forward for an early promotion review, which was unusual at my level, and it went through. I cried in the parking garage after she told me. Not because I was sad, because I suddenly understood how much capacity I had been running below for years. Marcus called me every few weeks. He wasn't asking for anything anymore. He was just calling. He told me about law school orientation, about finding an apartment with two classmates, about learning to do his own laundry and budget his own grocery runs. He still had moments of helplessness, and I could hear the old pull, the reflex to just tell him exactly what to do and watch it get fixed. But I let him find his own way to the answer more often than not. And he did, slowly in his stumbling way. He was becoming an actual adult, and I was watching it happen from a safe distance, and it was the strangest kind of proud. My mom reached out first. Not my dad, my mom. She texted me on a Thursday in March. Not a long text. Just, I've been thinking about you a lot. I started seeing a therapist. I wanted you to know. I sat with that for a day. Then I wrote back, I'm glad. How is it going? And she said, hard, useful. She's helping me see some things I should have seen a long time ago. We didn't have a dramatic reconciliation. We didn't sit across from each other and cry and say everything that needed to be said. That's not how my family works, and maybe it's not how most families work. What happened instead was slower and quieter. She started texting me occasionally, not to ask for things, but just to say something she'd seen or thought of. A photo of the dog in a sunbeam, a recipe she'd tried, a small observation about the neighborhood. I texted back, and then in May she asked if I'd want to get lunch sometime. Just us? I said yes. We went to a sandwich place near her office. We sat across from each other and talked for 2 hours. She apologized, not in a grand gesture kind of way, but in small, specific sentences, which mattered more. She said she hadn't realized how much I was carrying because I made it look easy, and she said that was her failure, not a compliment. She said she didn't have a good excuse. I told her thank you. I told her it mattered. And it did. My dad took longer. He came to a family lunch in June. My mom had organized it, and he shook my hand when I arrived, which was strange and formal and maybe the best he could do. Over the course of the lunch, he asked me 3 questions about my work. They were real questions, not conversation filler. He listened to the answers. After walking to our cars, he said, You seem good. I am, I said. Good, he said. And then he walked to his car. It wasn't the conversation I used to imagine having with him, the one where he finally understood everything and said all the right things. But it was real, and it was his, and I took it for what it was. That was 6 months ago. I still live in the same apartment. I've made it a real home now. There are paintings on the walls and a rug I picked out myself, and a coffee maker that does exactly what I wanted to. The tomato plant on my balcony died because I overwatered it, but I bought 2 more and I'm doing better this time. I see my family every couple of months. We meet for lunch or dinner. Neutral ground, and we talk about things that are real without going anywhere that would cost us the fragile working peace we've built. It's not the family I grew up imagining I had. But it's honest, and that turns out to be worth more than I thought. In my closet on the top shelf, I keep a folder. Inside the folder is the household contribution agreement, the one my dad printed out and slid across the white tablecloth at Harlow's. And $100 a month, start date December 1st, my full name at the top. I don't keep it because I'm still angry. The anger burned out a long time ago, replaced by something steadier and quieter. I keep it because it is the most clarifying document I've ever received. It told me, in plain Arial font, exactly what my place in that household was. And instead of convincing me to accept that place, it convinced me to build a different one. Some people would have signed it. Some people sign things like that their whole lives in 1,000 different forms, not always on paper. They absorb the message and adjust down to fit it. I spent a long time being one of those people, being useful enough, quiet enough, invisible enough. I'm not invisible anymore. If you've ever been handed a bill when you expected a toast, if you've ever been the one who kept the lights on while someone else got the applause, if you stayed past the point of pain because leaving felt like failure, I want you to hear this. Leaving is not failure. Leaving is sometimes the only way to make something real out of your life. You cannot pour yourself into a container that was never built to hold you. It will be hard. The first week, you'll eat cereal on an air mattress and watch your phone light up with names you spent your whole life answering. You'll want to pick up. You'd sit on your hands to stop yourself. And then, slowly, you'd start to hear yourself think. And you'll realize you had so much more inside you than you ever got to use. Sign your own lease. Buy your own keys. Water your own plants, even if you overwater them the first time. It's worth it. I promise. It's worth it. I've thought about this a lot in the months since I left. Not obsessively, not the way I used to replay things at 2 in the morning when I couldn't sleep. More like the way you think about something after it's finished, when you finally have enough distance to see the whole shape of it. What I keep coming back to is this: nobody in my family was trying to be cruel. That's the part that took me the longest to sit with. My dad didn't hand me that billing agreement because he hated me. My mom didn't forget to celebrate my promotion because she wanted me to feel small. Marcus didn't float through his 20s on everyone else's labor because he was malicious. They all just followed the path of least resistance, and the path of least resistance in our house had all run straight through me. That's what I mean when I talk about cause and effect. Not in a mystical sense, not karma or cosmic justice. Just the plain, observable truth that the way we treat people teaches them what to expect from us, and eventually, it teaches us what to expect from ourselves. My family learned to expect that I would handle things. I learned to expect that I wouldn't be seen. Both of those were consequences of the same long pattern, and the pattern didn't break until I walked out the door. I think about the night I packed and I don't feel angry about it anymore. I feel something closer to grateful, which would have seemed insane to me at the time. Grateful for a printed billing document and a dinner where my brother got a toast and I got a spreadsheet. But yes, because that night made something undeniable that I had been working very hard to deny for a very long time. And you can only fix a thing once you stop pretending it isn't broken. What I want to say, if any of this sounds familiar to you, is that intelligence isn't only about what you know. It's about being honest enough to see your own situation clearly, even when clarity is uncomfortable. I was smart enough to graduate with honors, to get promoted early, to plan and save and manage. But it took me years to be smart enough to look at my own life and say this isn't working and I deserve better than this. Moral courage is quieter than people think. It's not always a dramatic confrontation. Sometimes it's packing 2 suitcases at 1 in the morning. Sometimes it's sitting on your hands while your phone lights up and not answering. Sometimes it's telling your brother with kindness and without apology that you're not going to do his work for him anymore because you love him enough to let him figure it out. And resilience, real resilience, isn't about being tough enough to absorb whatever people give you. That's not strength, that's just endurance. Real resilience is having enough left in you to build something new after you've been running on empty for too long. It's signing a lease on a 1 bedroom apartment when your hands are shaking. It's buying 2 tomato plants after the first one dies. Lily made it. I made it. And so can you.